and I would just get anxiety. He's gonna find something that they don't like about this version.
They even deleted the footage off a hard drive, and then the client comes back 8, 12 months later.
You are gonna save so much time by doing this.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Paul and Ed with the MIDCONVO podcast, and we are here in Brooklyn, and we are gonna be talking about how to limit client revisions. We're gonna be covering how to avoid them, how to deal with them, and how to set yourself up for success with clients.
Yes, sir. So get ready for this fire episode. Let's roll intro music.
I'm gonna get right to the meat because we're the MIDCONVO. Mid-conversations are sometimes the best conversations.
Yep.
I wanna hear from you, Ed. What is the first terrible client situation that you had, or what comes to mind when you think of client revisions?
Dang. Wasting no time. We're just gonna get
I'm
straight
getting right
into it.
into it.
All right, we're gonna start off with the L's. All right, let's do this.
Yep.
So we each share a horror story. Okay. Maybe anyone who's listening can relate to this. I had one of the biggest budgets that I've had come my way. And, I was always under the assumption, the bigger paying clients are always going to be the easiest, right? That's what they say.
Yeah.
I kind of knew there was a few red flags with this client and during the email process, but I kind of got shiny object syndrome. I saw the number. I was like,
You're freaking out.
I'm going to do this. Still made it work. And then when I tell you that there was a lot of revisions,
Wow.
You just going back and forth, and then them being like, can we change the music? Can we change the music on a video is, you tell that to an editor, it's like, poof.
Yeah, I just edited the whole video to the song. Can we change the song?
Literally, you do the sound design, you do everything, you do all these things, you match all the cuts, spend a day, and there's that client say, oh, the song is kind of feeling, can we change it?
No.
And editor's like,
Shift. Can I just say, when you're working with a big client, sometimes it means that it's a big company. There's a lot of people on the marketing team. There's a lot of people that have their hands on all these decisions, which can suck.
Yeah,
because it's not just one person giving you feedback. It's a group of people giving you feedback. Is that what happened?
Yeah, kind of. But there's always usually one leading person.
Yep.
In this case, I don't know what you're talking about, but in this case in particular, there was one person who was giving me mainly the feedback, but it was really just the boundaries. It was one of those feelings where I would send off a reversion and I would just get anxiety. He's gonna find something that they don't like about this version because it was like that for the previous version. And literally 6 versions later, we were still making changes, and it sucks to be in that position where, and this is kind of where we're going to a little bit later. I now set boundaries for the revision count, which I should have done before, but I'm pretty loose on that, or I have been, not anymore. And then also, it was one of those client things where he would just call me right after. We had personal numbers, so he would ring me right after the revision. He would open the email, and then instead of responding in the email, I'm because once you edit, even with photos, you get off your computer and you're like, I'm not gonna touch this for another couple hours because I've been sitting at the computer screen for 4 or 5 hours, right? So you send it, you step away, he calls you right after I send the email, and he's like, oh, I just saw it, great job, but can we change this, and this? And now the work side of me, the work ethic in me is okay, I'm gonna go back to my computer, sit down, and do those revisions because it's gonna be quick.
Yeah.
But see, that is a vicious cycle, right? You go, sit back, and then before you know it, you're spending, when you actually average out the hours you spent on a project, even if the number was big, it all evens out if you get a client like that. Because you're spending so many more man hours on the edit.
Wow. It's kind of hard because I've seen this before where for every hour that you actually spend on set, sometimes it's 3 to 5, 7, 9 hours, in post or behind the scenes. That's a good example of that. And I know you learned a lot from that. How do you maintain the customer, being good with customer service? Because the client's always right. When you're getting so many revisions and you're my guy's calling me, they're sending me these long, paragraph notes on what needs to be changed.
Yeah.
Did you just say, hey, I'm going to finish this and I'm never going to work with them again?
I would definitely say, this is more of a tip for anyone listening. I would definitely say, be very honest with yourself if you want to work with this person ever again. my tolerance for this kind of stuff is really high. Like the client has to be really brutal for me to be like, I don't ever want to work with you again. I've literally only had that happen maybe a handful of times. But I would say I am the type of person where I won't go above and beyond if I feel like the client is not respecting my boundaries, or I feel like even if he was going to throw the most amount of money in front of me I've ever seen, and I still wouldn't take it just because this was such an unpleasant experience.
Yeah.
I would just do whatever I can to get it across the finish line as quickly and as efficiently as possible, while still holding up my reputation, and then I'm out.
That's good.
And I would not work with that client again. Yeah. I would tell them that like anytime they would reach out, I would just say, hey, I have too much on my plate right now, and I'm going to refer you to someone else.
That's good.
Or like, I'm just not taking on this kind of work right now. You know?
What's funny about that is I think about, kind of just touched on how you dealt with them, and then putting up some boundaries so then you can avoid situations like that in the future. Did a light bulb go off in that moment where you're like, going forward, I'm putting in any contract, or agreement with new clients, how many revisions I'm limiting them to?
No revisions.
No
you
revisions.
You work with me, you get no revisions.
Shut up. You
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I don't do revisions. You get what you get.
Can you imagine like, oh, can we fix this? No.
But no,
you get what you get. You don't make a fret. What is it called? This is like the saying in school?
No, that's a Seattle thing.
Oh my God. Don't lie.
That's a homeschool thing.
Oh my gosh.
I think let's get some practical tips.
Okay.
On how you can deal with maybe a client that is giving you hella revisions. All right. So you got to deal with them in the moment.
What's step
one?
What
are some things that you do?
What's step one for you?
I think it's hopping on a phone call. Back and forth email is extremely hard. I love getting them on an email, getting them on a phone call or a Zoom call and saying, hey, share with me all the revisions that you guys want. And I'm going to record this video. I'm going to take notes on it. And then I'll give you guys the version 2. The reason being is that it limits the back and forth. And I say, hey, just want to let you guys know that this is going to be the way that we're going to, be taking this project across the finish line, because I personally do not like the back and forth when it comes to email.
That's really good.
So tip number 1, maybe get them on a phone call instead of doing the whole email thing, because tone of voice is lost in email. You might think that they're pissed off at you because of the video that you delivered and think it's trash, but really it just might be the fact that that's their tone over email.
Yeah. And I think it's more of like a part B of the first point, which is feedback or initial feedback. To add to that, be quick about it.
Yeah.
And quick as in figure out. So for you, it's hopping on a call. For me, like for video is primarily a lot of what I do. You don't get revisions in an email. Like send like a video through Frame.io, Frame.io or Vimeo, or some place where they can give you feedback on the video in real time in like a comment section. Do not, I repeat, you are going to save so much time by doing this, because in the past, I would send them through like a WeTransfer link. They would download the video. They would make all these notes on their end, right? And then they would copy paste those notes into an email. And then I'm addressing, like it's a nightmare.
Wow.
Like it's just so much better if they can pinpoint, okay, at this timestamp, there was this feedback.
Frame.io.
Yeah. And with photos, let's say it's like hopping on a call and them being like, these are the images we selected, or this is the pixie set. Like this is what we didn't like. Can we change this and that? Like you're shortening the time that it takes to get the feedback.
Wow.
If you drag out the feedback time, revisions are going to suck 10 times harder as you go down that. So
that's good.
Feedback time and like hopping on a call after is huge. That's step one. That's step one.
Step one for sure. I think part of dealing with it too is you got to finish the project. So if you're looking at the timeline and you guys signed on a specific delivery date, be a really good communicator and call it out. Hey, because you guys are asking for these revisions, it's going to take me X amount of days. The next version will be shared on. Be a good communicator, be upfront, be transparent. If you're going to go over that deadline, guess what? You have every right to say that if they have revisions, and you need to like make sure that that video or that photo shoot is at a point where it's polished enough for them to say, hey, we're going to move on. This is good. Thank you.
Yep. So be a good communicator. That's the second tip.
Yep.
The third tip I have for y'all is don't be so quick to be offended. This is so crucial. Like this was actually a huge one for me as an editor, as a freelance creative, as a creative entrepreneur. When you get feedback, don't be offended because obviously there's going to be people who are more rude than others. Like I'm just say how it is. Some clients are just rude.
Yep.
Some people don't show as much as enthusiasm as you would like them to. You send them a fire gallery, absolute fire edit. They hit you with the thanks.
Wow.
Thanks, Paul.
Yep.
Looks good. Looks
Totally.
great. But like I'm saying, even if they do have a lot of revisions for you, one thing that I've learned to do is say, okay, take a deep breath and move forward like as if I were the business owner trying to get it out of a video editor.
Yep.
A lot of times early on when I was a freelancer, I would get very offended. I'd be like, the song choice is bad here, or these photo edits are like way too cool, or like you kind of, they'll say things like, oh, this is not what we envisioned, right? And my first reaction used to be, oh my gosh, man, frick these clients. They don't understand my vision, you know? But
you got to disconnect yourself from the art sometimes.
You do, because
not everyone's going to be the easy client.
Yep. And
right?
You will get to your destination of finishing like that project much quicker if you're not as easily offended.
Yeah. I hate to spill the bad news for people that have had the best clients, but you are going to have a bad one. And you are going to find that some clients are more needier than others, which brings me to 8 years ago, I got referred to a beverage brand. And it was my first ever big brand shoot. They sent me the product. I did the shoot. I sent back photos to, my client for revisions. And this was the first time ever working with them. Dude, I put it all out there. I was like, I am so excited to share these with them. They're going to love them. Oh my goodness. They had so many revisions, more than it was so much that I just had to redo the entire shoot because of all their requests.
Oh my.
And in that moment, I remember taking a deep breath, calling a few friends and saying, what should I do? And they're like, you got to take their feedback and redo it or fix the problem. I fixed the problem, delivered those photos to them. And guess what? Fast forward to now, I'm still working with this client.
Wow.
And at that time, the budget was about $1,500. Let's just say it's kind of 10x. Whenever we work together now, it's at least $10,000. So I just want to let you know that even though there's a client that might have a lot of revisions on that first project, or you run into a client that's just super hard to deal with that, just know that it might not always be like that. You're working with them maybe for the first time. They know more about their brand than you do. They know the do's and don'ts. They have the brand guide. So take a deep breath, fix the problem, and if anything, make sure that going forward in your contract or in the service agreement that you limit the amount of revisions.
Yep. That's really good. That's a crazy story.
Yeah.
That you 10x from a bad
And I remember I was so butthurt. I remember being like, I don't think I'm cut out for working with brands or commercial. I'm going to go back to weddings.
And because it was so early in your...
That was a pivotal point for me where, man, there was people telling me in my family, hey, you can't say you're a professional photographer because you just started. And then the revisions came back and I'm like, am I good enough? So I just want to encourage you guys that like, even now I've been doing this for 10 years. I still run into clients that are one-offs that I've worked with maybe for the first time. And they're like, hey, we got a lot of feedback. Can you hop on a call? I got to take a deep breath. I got to receive it. Sometimes it's just a few things. Sometimes it's a lot of things.
Yeah. Feedback is hard to take. And that's kind of going into like the don't be offended part, is just don't hold your art or what you do so close to your chest. I mean, I know some people where like their craft, right, whether that's like photography, graphic design, videography, like filmmaking, it's like that's their whole identity. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily. Like, it's good to be passionate, but some people, that's literally like, they feel like if you take that away from them, they're like empty. Like they're nobody. Like they have nothing else going on for them in their life. If you take this away from them. And like, I would encourage anyone listening to like, don't put yourself in that position, because you're in a very vulnerable position.
Wow.
Because if something hits the fan, someone affects you, it could really set you back.
Wow.
And like, don't get me wrong, I'm always pushing the needle forward. I always want to be more talented as a filmmaker, as a content creator, but like, I'm never holding that so close to the chest where like tomorrow if I woke up and for some odd reason, like I could no longer create, it's not the end of the world. Like, I have a life outside of what we do. I have other things that I'm more happy about. There's arguably more things that are more important than like what we do for like work.
Yeah.
And I think that is important because it keeps you grounded. You don't want to be so affected by what you're doing. There's a difference between being passionate with a goal and then just being like outright all your eggs in one basket, way too overcommitted into something that is going to consume your entire life. So
That's good.
yeah.
I want to share one quick thing. If you're in a position where you're trying to figure out how to avoid running into clients that are needy or have a lot of feedback, and that time, that project timeline just keeps growing and it never ends and there's never an end date, you have to have a contract in place. I find that a lot of freelancers that tap into MIDCONVO that are asking questions in regards to bad client stories or situations, my first question is there a contract in place? Can I see it? Because you can put things on it like project start and end date. You can put things on it like, hey, for each additional revision outside of X amount of revisions, I'm going to charge this much per hour or per edit, however you want to do that. Highly recommend having that because it's going to protect you. And also, there are times where I've talked to photographers where they thought the project was done. This happens a lot in weddings.
Yeah.
Wedding photographers. But it's like they thought the project was done. They moved on. They even deleted the footage off a hard drive. And then the client comes back 8 to 12 months later and says, hey, I feel so bad, but like, can we have you recolor these? And they're like, I thought the project was done. Well, guess what? It's not done unless you have a contract in place. So I just want to call that out. That's one way that you can avoid those situations.
Contract. Have your contracts, yo. I honestly didn't have contracts till a couple years into my business, which I regret because some of those, they did come back. So having a contract is crucial. And I think that goes into kind of an overarching tip, which is like, be prepared. Be prepared before you work on these projects. Like, the reason why you would ever get a lot of revisions is if you missed the mark.
Yeah.
And honestly, the reason why you missed the mark is because you and your client were not aligned in what the finished result should have been.
Whoa, that's facts.
So if you can be more prepared, make sure you are more aligned on your vision together, whether that's the color, the pacing, the song choice. And these are all things you can discuss before you even touch your camera.
Yep.
So if you can actually get all that out of the way, you will limit the amount of revisions that you'll have to do after.
Yep.
And if you have too many revisions, it's just because they're disappointed in how it ended up. You thought this is what they wanted. That's not what they wanted. And that's kind of where it starts.
I think it's a simple equation. If you're unprepared and you don't have solid pre-production or communication, or you're not asking the right questions going into a project, it's on you too to like orchestrate that with the client.
Exactly.
Ask for examples, ask for inspiration, ask for what they're trying to achieve, ask for their do's and don'ts, ask for their brand guide, whatever it is. Set yourself up so then you can say, I did all in my power in order to make this a good project. But guess what? If they're still difficult and you're like, I can't win, don't work with them again.
Exactly. We actually have an episode we shot on asking the right questions.
That's good.
Which you guys should go give that a listen if you're wondering what questions to ask to feel prepared before a project comes. But yeah, going back to this episode, which is, how to limit client revisions, I would also like to add that with revisions, it's important that you are quick. It's just like we talked about, we're in a service-based business. If you're not quick with your revisions, there's a cool off time. Like, you wait too long, the clients are not going to reach back out to you.
Yep.
There's one thing that I think also limits revisions, which we've talked about before, but why do creatives do this? Do not send your client unfinished products.
No.
Like, okay, let's just say in the context of a photographer, that's like sending the selects to like your client that's not edited, that's not colored.
Yeah.
Just being like, hey, these are the
sending raw images.
These are the
log
selects. What do you think about them? And then once you like them, I'll color them. It's like, for me, for the way I run my business, that's a no. That's like sending a video to a client being like, hey, I pulled all the B-roll from our shoot. These are like how beautiful the clips are, but I haven't color graded it. I haven't added sound design. I haven't added anything, but I just wanted to show you what I have. I would honestly advise against anyone who does that, because you might think you're doing them a solid by keeping them in the loop, but that's not what I think it means when people say keep your client in the loop. That whenever I receive like client projects like that, I always over deliver. And like when the client, the very first time they see a deliverable, that is like my version of like the final. And then there's revisions. But doing that limits a lot of revisions, a lot of back and forth. Because I send them like a rough cut, and it's like truly a rough cut. Dude, we're gonna have so many revisions. The client's going to be like, we paid for what?
Yeah.
Because if you're listening to this and you're creative, you already know. You pull that raw image into Lightroom, that ain't looking nothing like how it's going to end up in the gallery. So why would you ever show that to the client? Just trying to, I don't know, like show them that you did your job,
I think that's the biggest miss right now with a lot of freelancers is not putting in the time to bring it to a finished product.
Yeah.
Like raw assets ain't it. Okay. The decision makers, they might not even know what the heck log or raw footage means.
Yeah, exactly.
They're investing into strategic, beautiful content or video ads for their business. They're not looking for something that is going to be half baked. So I just want to encourage you guys that there's a lot of things you can do to limit revisions, right? We touched on a few of them right now on the mic. But if you're in a situation right now where maybe you're even working with a long-term client and you're like, my goodness, I don't know how to stop this faucet from dripping. This project continues on over time. I want to encourage you that maybe sit down with them and say, hey, going forward, I just want to rework our pricing and the way that we're going to work together. Because what's happened in the past is we're running into a lot of revisions. So figure out a way to button up your process, and I guarantee you it's going to limit the back and forth.
Yep, that's good. I hope everyone took something away from this. If you're dealing with a bad client right now, hopefully you have a bit of a strategy on how to handle it moving forward. If you aren't dealing with a bad client right now, please be prepared and take some of these tips we talked about in this episode so you can avoid having those nightmare clients where you're going back and forth with revisions. So client revisions suck. And no one, if it has to be revised, it means the first one was a miss. So we're trying to help everyone make sure their first one is not as much of a miss as like a big flop of a project.
And if you have a client that you're trying to get rid of because of all the back and forth revisions, just want to let you know.
Cut them off. Cut them off.
No, send them to me and Ed. Me and Ed will gladly take them and make sure that there's structure in the process.
Nah, just send it to Paul, bro. Just send it to Paul. Don't send it to me. You have a bad client, you listen to it,
I'll put them on retainer.
Send them to Paul. Send them to Paul.
But no, thank you guys so much for listening, tuning into the MIDCONVO. If you found value from this episode, leave us a review, leave a comment on our Spotify, and we'll continue to put out more episodes.
I'm putting a question down below if you're on Spotify. Share your horror story client revision in the comment section down below. I would love to hear some of the horror stories that you guys have had, and maybe we can address it in a future episode.
Talk to you guys soon.
Peace.